Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a highly requested video. We're just going to jump right in because I'm not trying to make it too long. This is going to be how to make a basic glitter tumbler. So this tumbler that I have right here is a 30-ounce hog that I got off of stainlesssteeldepot.com. I sanded it, and normally I would have spray painted a base color to that, but I'm doing silver glitter today, so I left the cup silver. So as you saw, I'm using amazing clear cast epoxy resin. Right here I'm doing 2.5 milliliters of part B and 2.5 milliliters of part A for a total of 5 milliliters. You mix that together with a popsicle stick pretty slowly. You try not to get air bubbles, and you try to kind of let those make that chemical reaction and meld together. I also hit it with my heat gun for just a little bit to help it combine. And then all over this cup, I go ahead and apply the epoxy. Some people say that it's better if you let the epoxy sit for a little bit longer, let it thicken up a little bit, but I just don't have the patience, and I haven't really seen a big deal happen. Now for this, because we're putting glitter right on top of the epoxy, I did not use all this epoxy as you see here. I put the thinnest layer as possible. So if you put a giant thick layer, you're going to have to use so much glitter, and your epoxy is just going to soak that up so much that you're going to use way too much glitter. So I'm making sure that this is even all over the cup, and then I'm taking my heat gun and I am blowing that all over there. This helps get out any bubbles so that the glitter can lay good on there and that there aren't any fish eyes or bubbles in your epoxy. So next I'm going to be applying my glitter. There are different ways that you can apply the glitter. If you want to do it a different way without epoxy, you can look up the Mod Podge method. I just prefer this method. I use City Lights by Glitter Heart Company for this glitter tumbler that I'm making. I always put it in a spare cup like this so that I'm not pouring it directly out of the bottle, and I'm able to keep reusing that same glitter with the fallout that happens. And don't worry, I will change the camera angle so you can see better. So I do usually start at the bottom of the cup and then work my way up to the top of it. As you can see here, I will look and see if there's any spots where there was a little bit thicker parts of the epoxy. You can see like the little shallow areas that aren't as filled with the glitter. So I will go back over those spots, as you can see right there, and I will continue all the way up the top of the cup, and once the whole cup is glittered, I'll go back over the whole thing with a good layer just to make sure that it's completely coated. And as you can see here, I do have 2 layers of paper. So I use that silicone mold or that silicone mat to catch any epoxy, and then after that I put a piece of paper down so that I can keep reusing the fallout that happens. If you were trying to put that piece of paper down on epoxy that has dripped, and that paper will stick, and you might have a difficult time reusing that fallout for that glitter. So what I do is I kind of taco it and pour it back into that little cup that I've had. Now this is the method that I do to try to get the bottom. I've seen some people pour some on a piece of paper and dip it, but I've just found that this is the best way to do that. And as you can see, I actually messed up here and had to put some more glitter in an area that I accidentally scraped. So whenever it's wet, it is redeemable. Don't freak out, especially if this is your first time making these kinds of cups. It's all just a learning curve. You just got to practice. But I do not recommend touching that with bare hands like I just did there. That was just like an emergency moment. I thought that I wasn't going to be able to redeem that cup, so I touched it, but normally I would only use gloves to touch this. So as you can see there, my cup is completely covered. I really didn't use that much glitter at all, and it looks great. So at this point, you're going to let the cup sit for probably 2 to 4 hours. I think I let it sit for 2 hours. If this had multiple colors on it, then I would have waited a longer time, and I would have sprayed it with a clear sealer to make sure that once I rub that top epoxy layer all over it, it's not going to spread the glitter around everywhere. But since this is one color, I'm not going to spray seal it, and I'm not going to really worry about waiting too long. So here I'm doing a good thick layer. I believe here I did 10 mLs of part B and 10 mLs of part A, and the reason why I keep saying part B first is because it's a lot more liquidy than part A, so I always pour that in first. I do also just want to mention that I am wearing a face mask that I special ordered. It's not specifically made for resin, but I did contact the company and make sure that it did filter out epoxy fumes. Epoxy fumes are very, very toxic, and you don't want to breathe that in without some kind of protection on your face. You don't want to touch it. That's the reason why I'm using gloves here, and I'm also right next to a window that I always leave open so that those fumes can get out of the house. I would actually recommend doing it in an even more well ventilated area because it is very toxic, can cause cancer and everything of that nature. So now that I'm putting this giant layer on, I'm starting at the bottom and working my way up to the top. I do want to make sure that this is as smooth as possible because I don't want to have to put too many layers on top of it. So as you can see, I'm just kind of spreading it out, but putting it in a pretty thick layer. One area that you really want to focus on is the top and the bottom. So around these rims, the top rim and the bottom rim, because sometimes that can be missed, those can have little spots that aren't as even and hardened and nice as other areas of the cup, because you still have that glitter there that hasn't been covered well enough, so that rough glitter comes out underneath. And if that does happen, it's totally fine. You can sand it down a little bit and put a whole nother layer on top of it. But luckily for this cup specifically, I only had to do one layer of epoxy. And if that's what you wanted to do in this situation, that's exactly what you can do. At this point, you need to let the cup sit for 24 hours until it's like fully cured on the outside. If you wanted to put a vinyl on top of it, you could do that and then put another layer of epoxy. I would recommend 20 milliliters on top of that. So again, I'm doing the heat gun again to get any bubbles out, and I'm going to let this spin for 12 hours and then sit for another 12 hours for a total of 24 hours. So here we are 24 hours later. It's completely dried on the outside. Now, epoxy does take 72 hours to fully cure, but we can touch this and everything. So I'm going to clean it up now that it's completely done. If everything is smooth to you and you don't need another layer, then you can go ahead and lightly sand the top rim and the bottom rim just to make sure that it's smooth. Don't do it too hard though. And then I will take acetone and rub it around that inside where I'm putting my finger right there. And I will also take an x-acto knife and scrape off any extra epoxy or glitter that is around that rim. And then I will wash it with Dawn soap in warm water, but remember, this is not dishwasher safe, hand wash only, no soaking or anything. And yeah, that's how you make a basic glitter cup. If you guys liked it, make sure to let me know and like this video and subscribe, and I'll make more complex ones in the future.